Within Konoha, Tsunade sat within her seat in the council chambers, as she eyed those that sat around her. The power of the council had changed from what it had once been with the deaths of the three elders, along with the heads of the Hyuga, Nara, and Yamanaka clans during the war. Currently, Nara Yoshino and Yamanaka Hisano were acting as placeholders for their children who were considered too young to have a place on the council at this point. Also joining them was Hyuga Hanar, the mother of Hyuga Hayashi and thus the grandmother of Hinata. This meeting taking place held only the military portion of the council, as the village was still under martial law and would continue to operate as such until they had recovered a bit more. As such, no civilian council member was present. However, Marino Ibiki as head of ANBU-TNI was in attendance, as was the head of ANBU itself, along with the heads of various other departments within the military infrastructure. Unlike the meeting a few days prior, this one was an actual scheduled meeting, while the last one had just been called so that she could get the ball rolling on Naruto officially becoming her successor. As it was, she was pleased with a vast majority of what she had heard in the last 2 hours. She had just been given a briefing on the border patrols and was not surprised that they weren't having any problems. At this point, she knew that none of the major powers were capable of starting any trouble, as they had all suffered some staggering losses during the brief war. The minor villages had tried at the closing, but that had stopped with swiftness after the first few probes to come their way. Now then, is that everything? Questioned Tsunade as she looked around the room, an action several others mimicked, and when no one spoke up, nodded her head. Good, there are only 2 more subjects to discuss for today then. First thing is that I would like to revive the military police, stated Tsunade, bringing a hush over the room. Are you sure that's wise, Hokage-sama? We're still trying to rebuild our manpower from the war, and we never recovered from the Suna/Oto invasion 4 years ago, stated the Yamanaka matriarch. It's necessary. Due to our losses, we have shinobi constantly out on missions and fatigue is wearing them down. However, because of this, we are leaving a hole inside our village which the wrong element can exploit if we are not careful. I would also like it if ANBU presence could be visually kept to a minimum, and reviving the police force would go a long way in helping with that, explained Tsunade. Strictly speaking, ANBU are not supposed to operate inside of the walls of Konoha, with the exception of those selected to act as the Hokage's guard detail. However, since the Uchiha massacre, we have taken up the slack left in their wake. However, this was only meant to be temporary, as at this point we are acting in blatant violation of Konoha's charter, stated the ANBU commander. Then which clan would you suggest take up the role? Questioned Akimichi Chuza. I don't want a single clan in charge. We made that mistake with the Uchiha, and look what happened. Instead, however, I would suggest anyone willing would be able to join up. There are many shinobi who do not currently wish to take as many missions after the war, yet will not retire their ranks, as they still wish to be of use to the village. While I am not adverse to members of our shinobi clans joining up, the force will no longer be a clan-exclusive thing, stated Tsunade. That could actually work, stated Nara Yoshino, her mind already running through the possibilities. Most people who met her would not think that she was an actual Nara due to her personality. However, what most didn't realize is that her personality was a direct result of her Jounin sensei, as she had once been just as lazy as the rest of her clan. We'll have to come up with a budget and training, but I think that it's doable, stated Yoshino after several moments of thought. We'll shelf the discussion for a later time then. The final issue is actually the most important. Before anything else, know that what you all learn now will be regarded as an S-class secret. I'm sure all of you know the consequences of revealing such a secret, stated the woman, causing many to sit straighter in their seats. As of this moment, Naruto is currently missing. Immediately after the news she was given, everyone reacted in some way. Whether it was a gasp, body tensing, the widening of their eyes, or simply a twitch, everyone reacted in some way. A few days ago, Naruto was working on a new seal when he was interrupted by Kakashi. As a result of his surprise, the seal activated, and when everything cleared, Naruto was gone. However, we have since learned that he was flung into a different dimension due to a character flaw in the seal. Since then, the Toads have tried to reverse summon him, and while he has made it to empty Mayaboka, they have found that it is impossible to summon him back to this dimension, explained Tsunade. That's not good, stated the Yamanaka matriarch with a grimace. Not good, it's a disaster, exclaimed Inuzuka, her face pale. Indeed, can you imagine what would happen if the other villages found out that we just lost both a Kaiga-level shinobi and the Kyubi? Stated the Hyuga elder. Forget the other villages. If the Jubi finds out, stated Chuza before trailing off. At this, silence came over the room, as all of them could very well imagine what would happen in such a scenario. While several of them had not seen the beast in action, they'd heard the horror stories from those that had, and when they were informed that it had taken on all 9 of the other Bija at once, and had knocked them around, it had put some real fear into them. That is precisely why this information is being regarded as such a high-level secret. As it is, Fukusaku, one of the elder Toad sages, has sought the aid of a more experienced Fuinjutsu specialist from the Summon Realm to help him go over it. He also brought correspondence from Naruto himself. As of now, he is doing fine and currently training with a sect of mercenaries who he has discovered are very much similar to shinobi. In fact, the leader Araz al-Ghul has taken him on as his successor, and as such, when Naruto makes his return, he'll be coming with nearly 100 more people we can add to our ranks. Explained Swanda. Well, we could definitely use the manpower. Still, it's hard to believe he has accomplished so much in only a few days. Stated Ibiki. He hasn't. According to Naruto, 6 months have gone by. Stated Tsunade. By that logic, several years could go by for him before he returns. Stated the ANBU commander from behind his skull mask. Before anyone could say anything more, a plume of smoke could be seen, and the elder sage appeared in the center of the table. As he spoke, Tsunade had to fight to withhold a smile. She was ready to get this ball rolling. For months after his little trip to Cadmus Labs found Naruto frowning as he went through a scroll giving a greater detail on the mechanics behind Fuinjutsu. During the time that had passed, he'd received quite a bit of correspondence from Tsunade. He had learned that she was keeping the news of his disappearance quiet, and on a need-to-know basis. And due to the difference in time, it was easier, as by this point only a week had passed for them. She'd also informed him she would be putting a team together so that he would have some support, and given him the go-ahead to begin instructing the League in basic shinobi teaching, even sending him some material for them to read through. He of course had gone through it first, since unlike the rest of his class he hadn't gotten the privilege of books during his time in the academy. As such, he'd take the opportunity, and had clones go through them, in effect getting all of the missed book knowledge that he'd lacked. While it hadn't been full of techniques, he had come away with the rope escape technique along with the theoretical knowledge, so it hadn't been a complete waste of time. Still, while that was all well and good, the true gems had been delivered by Fukusaku. The old Toad Sage had shown up with a whole new summoning contract which he had explained belonged to his mother's clan, and as such he was allowed to summon both species. While he loved toads and always would, his new summons had been labeled badass automatically. Forget the fact they were tigers. They were orange. As far as he was concerned, orange equals badass. For example, Kurama, Naruto, and tigers, all 3 had orange as a coloration, and all 3 were badass. The tigers themselves had also come bearing gifts, and not just anything but loads of scrolls marked with the Uzumaki clan seal. It was amazing. The whole world thought that the knowledge of Uzushio had been lost, yet it had been kept safe all that time by the clan's summons. He had tore into the knowledge like a starving person. However, Fuinjutsu, ninjutsu, and anything else had been pushed to the side. The history, however, he'd gone after viciously. All his life he'd hungered for the knowledge of who he was and where he came from, disguising that hunger with a boisterous personality focused on a set future. With the knowledge at his fingertips, he'd shut himself into his room and hadn't emerged for 3 days, he'd been so absorbed. In that time he'd learned that many of his mannerisms were purely genetic. His personal summons, Tatsumaki, had explained that members of the Uzumaki clan were a rowdy bunch. They didn't sit on formality. They spoke their minds and never broke their word. Tatsumaki had said that while he physically resembled his father, inside he was all Uzumaki. After his history lesson and the time it had taken him to come to grips with all he'd learned, he had reinvested himself in his training, only this time using his clan's scrolls for guidance. The first thing had been chakra control, which the scrolls had stressed the importance of. Plus, as a clan of people boasting naturally massive chakra pools, Naruto had been elated to find they held exercises he'd never even heard of or thought about. Because of this, his control had shot through the roof and was in fact now so good he could now make 10 regular bunshin. His current goal, however, was to get that number down to 5. Following that, he'd spent his time going through the ninjutsu scrolls and had come out with a wealth of new techniques under his belt. Much to his disappointment, Jiraiya had never taught him any jutsu during their training trips, so he considered the new techniques as godsends. He was so sick of power-ups, especially since all of them carried huge risks, even if the results were worth it. Due to just how old the clan was, there had been loads of techniques for every element. He had sent clones out to learn techniques for only 3 of those. He himself had taken the time to invest himself into his Fuinjutsu, studying the subject more under Tatsumaki. The goal was to be able to break down the mechanics behind any seal, even on he was seeing for the first time after only a few minutes for the more complex ones. On the plus side, he was pretty sure he could now do away with Orochimaru's cursed seal. Which was good, since the bastard had managed to slip away after the final battle of the war while no one had been paying attention. His thoughts on the matter, however, were interrupted by the ringing of his phone. "Today is the day," stated a voice on the other end as soon as he picked up before the call ended. Placing down his phone, he put away his supplies and proceeded to change into his mission gear. Throwing on a pair of black pants and an orange muscle shirt, he placed on a black combat vest over that. That done, he put on a black trench coat and secured a white mask with red stripes to his face, the mask taking the likeness of a kitsune. Looking back over towards his bed, he could see Talia looking at him, her head still resting on the pillow and her body covered by the sheets. "Let your old man know I'm going to check some things out," stated Naruto. "Of course, do hurry, beloved. I believe I may have recovered sufficiently enough to continue from where we left off," stated Talia. "Kurama, you awake?" called the blonde mentally. "For the moment, why?" came the response. "Today's the day," answered the teen before he vanished in a flicker due to usage of Haration. Elsewhere, a trio of oddly dressed teens were within a darkened room within Cadmus Labs looking for information. One of them was dressed in a yellow and red spandex suit with a lightning bolt designed in the center. Another, this one younger in appearance, wore a spandex suit consisting of black legging with a short-sleeved dark red shirt with a stylized R over his heart. Attached at his shoulders to the shirt was a black cape with a white interior, and he wore a domino mask that hid the color of his eyes. The last of the group wore a pair of blue pants and a dark red sleeveless shirt, allowing the tribal-like tattoos on his arms to be seen. These 3 were Kid Flash, Robin, and Aqualad, the sidekicks of the Flash, Batman, and Aquaman. Today was supposed to be the day that they would be allowed to take their places as members of the Justice League. Unfortunately, that hadn't happened, and they'd all been benched when their mentors had went off to solve a problem. There was a 4th that had been there, Speedy, the sidekick to Green Arrow, only unlike them he'd quit and walked out feeling insulted at what he felt was a slap in the face by the League, who wouldn't even take them to the real headquarters, just a fake they had set up in Washington, D.C. for tourists. After he had stormed off and the mentors had been called away, the trio had decided to investigate Cadmus upon hearing that Batman himself was looking into the place. As Aqualad walked out into the hall, the sound of a ding caught his attention. Looking over to his left towards it, he was just in time to see the elevator doors closing and get a glance at the shadowed figure inside, which looked as if it had horns on its head. "There was something in the," started Aqualad, taking a few steps towards the elevator, only of Kid Flash to come running out. "Elevators should be locked down," stated Kid Flash, with Robin running out right after him. "This is wrong." As he said this, he tapped his wrist and a holographic computer shot out of his glove for the other 2 to see as the boy Wonder went about typing. "Thought so. This is a high-speed express elevator. It doesn't even belong in this building," stated Robin. "Neither does what I saw," said Aqualad before forcing the door open. As it opened and the trio could look through, they found themselves looking down a long shaft that explained exactly why they needed an express elevator in the building. Robin didn't waste a moment, leaping off the edge and firing his grappling gun at the ceiling, using it to shoot down the shaft, with Aqualad and Kid Flash quickly following by sliding down the cord. Eventually he reached the end of the line as the cord had run out, and as such was forced to hop to the nearest ledge, which showed level 26, before taking a seat and once more activating his holographic computer, and managed to quickly hack the systems so they could disable and open the door. Once Aqualad pried the door off, Kid Flash wasted no time speeding ahead, ignoring Aqualad's call for him to stop, only for him to nearly be crushed as several giant creatures came up the hallway and nearly stepped on him, if not for him stumbling back out of their way. "Nope, nothing odd going on here," stated Aqualad as the trio watched the creatures pass. Not long later, Robin had managed to hack the systems once more and as such was able to open up a large set of double doors. Once inside, they could see several strange creatures stacked in glass canisters at least 10 high, and each with a row going down the corridor. This is how they hid this massive underground facility from the world. The real Cadmus isn't on the grid. It generates its own power with these things. Must be what they're bred for, said Kid Flash. Even the name is a clue. The Cadmus of myth created a new race by sowing dragon's teeth into the earth, stated Aqualad, and this Cadmus creates new life too. Let's find out why, stated Robin, heading over to a nearby terminal and hacking it with his holographic computer thanks to a USB connection. They call them genomorphs. Whoa! Look at the stats on these things: super strength, telepathy, razor claws. These are living weapons! Exclaimed Robin in surprise. They're engineering an army, but for who? Questioned Kid Flash, looking through the data. Wait, there's something else. Let's see Project Next Gen. Ugh, the files are triple encrypted, I can't. Don't move, called a new voice, catching their attention. Wait, Robin, Aqualad, Kid Flash, what are you doing here? Questioned the man who wore a dark blue jumpsuit with a golden helmet and golden shoulder and wrist pads. Least he got your name right, muttered Robin, turning his attention back to his computer. Hey, I know you, your Guardian, a hero, stated Aqualad. I try, stated Guardian. So what are you doing here? Questioned Kid Flash. I'm Chief of Security, you guys are trespassing. We'll just call the Justice League and straighten this out though, said Guardian. Wait, you think the League's going to approve of you guys breeding weapons? Stated Kid Flash incredulously. Back in Konoha, Tsunade could be found in her office looking across her desk at the 3 teams that had been gathered due to her summons. On the other side of the desk stood the former Team Asuma, which consists of Nara Shikamaru, Yamanaka Ino, and Akimichi Choji. Along with them was Team Guy, which included Hyuga Niji, Tenten, and Rock Lee. Finally, along with them was her apprentice Haruno Sakura and Hataki Kakashi. I thank all of you for arriving in such a prompt manner, began Tsunade, pleased to see the serious expression on Kakashi's face. Over the past few days that seal has been carefully studied, and according to Fukusaku they have managed to create a stable version of it. After careful deliberation, you all have been selected to act as the backup squad that will be going to support Naruto, stated Tsunade, shocking all of them. Kakashi, the council believes that in my anger I acted rashly and took my aggression out on you. Because of this I am restoring you to the rank of Jounin. However, you are still banned from Ika Ika. Obviously, Kakashi and Niji as Jounin will be in overall command for this mission, until you link up with Naruto, and he can help you guys from there. Also, as Team Kakashi is 1 short, and you might need some extra muscle, I believe you should go and get him, Kakashi, stated Tsunade, further shocking everyone as they knew exactly who she meant. This is an S-class mission and your top priority is getting Naruto back here safely. You don't need to worry how much time it takes, as time flows differently. You leave in 3 days, dismissed. Kakashi, stay for a moment. Once the office doors closed again, Tsunade stood from her seat and moved over to the window to look out over the village. Kakashi, let me be clear with you. The council is giving you a second chance, against my advice. However, I am willing to go along with it. However, if I find out that anything went wrong on this mission, that it was your fault, you'd better die over there. Naruto overlooks the fact that you were a horrible teacher to him, and didn't help out until you needed him. I don't, especially as you were one of the few who knew of his connection to the Yondaime, and did nothing to help him as a child. But I am not so easily forgiven. I hope you can earn that trust and forgiveness back. Robin, Kid Flash, and Aqualad found themselves even deeper in the complex. There had been a small altercation with Guardian and the Genomorphs that Robin had opted out of in order to hack and open another elevator. However, instead of going up and out as Aqualad and Kid Flash had thought they would be doing, the elevator had descended even deeper because Project Next Gen was on sublevel 52, and he wanted to see what it was. Aqualad had thought that they should contact the League, however, seeing as the elevator opened at just that moment, he was outvoted as the group opted to continue on. Now here they found themselves in a strange red-colored catacomb-like place that would not have been out of place in any sci-fi/horror film. Which way? Questioned Aqualad as they came upon a fork in the road. Yeah, bizarre-looking hallway 1, or bizarre-looking hallway 2, said Robin. Halt came a new voice. Looking up, they were greeted to the sight of a xenomorph with the appearance of a tall, slender man with blue skin. His head is radically different from that of a human, most notably in the presence of horns and absence of a nose. He also has pointed, fin-like ears, and 2 ribbons of flesh on both of his cheeks. As far as clothing, he was dressed in what looked like white hospital scrubs. In the next instant he had held his hand up and the horns and eyes had all glowed with a red light before several metal containers levitated and were tossed at them. Ducking under the containers that blew up once they struck the wall behind them, Robin quickly tossed one of his batarangs, which was red and shaped like a shuriken. As it flew, the xenomorph held up its hand and it fell to the ground harmlessly while the trio ran for it through the hallway he didn't come from, while the xenomorph tossed 2 more containers at them which struck the ground and exploded. Just after this happened, Guardian and several more xenomorphs came out from the elevator with the xenomorph telling them they were heading towards Project Next Gen. As he rounded a corner, Kid Flash almost slammed directly into a scientist that had been emerging from a set of large doors. Sliding to a stop, he fell on his, but yet quickly managed to recover, and seeing the doors sliding closed, managed to prop it open with a container that was sitting on the side just as Robin and Aqualad rounded the corner, with Aqualad kicking the container out, allowing the doors to close. Turning to Robin, the Atlantean sidekick found he was already at work on his holographic computer. There, I disabled the door. We're safe, said Robin. No, we're trapped, corrected Aqualad. Guys, you might want to see this, said Kid Flash, catching their attention. Pressing a button on the console in front of him, he activated the lights, revealing 2 tubes in front of them. In one was a Caucasian male with short black hair and a familiar facial structure that appeared to be in his mid-teens and was quite tall. He wore white pants and a long-sleeved white shirt printed on which was a red S within a pentagon. On the glass casing of the tube it bore the marking Project KR. In the other was a girl that also appeared in her mid-teens and was incredibly beautiful, with her long black hair that was framing her face, the bangs of which fell down to her neck. She likewise wore white pants and a white shirt with 2 imprinted W's on the shirt. On the glass container it stated Project Wonder, and in each case perched above them were 3 xenomorphs that looked like gremlins. Big K, little r, it's the atomic symbol for Krypton. What do you think, clones? Said Kid Flash. Robin, hack it, said Aqualad, breaking the boy Wonder from his stupor, who quickly did so. Weapon designations Superba and Wonder Girl, clones forced grown in 16 weeks, said Robin in shock. DNA acquired from Superman and Wonder Woman, finished Robin. Stolen from them, said Aqualad. No way those 2 know about this, said Kid Flash. Solar suits allow them to absorb yellow sun radiation 24/7, stated Robin. Wait, back up, both of them are absorbing yellow sun radiation, questioned Kid Flash. Yeah, why? Questioned Robin. Wonder Woman doesn't need to, she was born with her abilities. Only Superman's powers are granted by the sun, stated Kid Flash. And these creatures? Questioned Aqualad. Xenomorph gnomes telepathically force-feeding them educations, stated Robin. And we can guess what else. They're making slaves out of Superman and Wonder Woman's kids, said Kid Flash. Now we contact the League, stated Aqualad, reaching a hand down to the emblem on his belt and pressing it. No signal, stated Robin, looking at his computer. We're down too deep, said Kid Flash with a frown. On the other side of the door, the familiar form of Dr. Desmond had run down and entered the hall to find Guardian as well as all the xenomorphs standing outside of it. They're still in there with the weapons? Questioned Desmond angrily. Well, we can't get the door open, stated Guardian. Use your telekinesis, stated Desmond, rounding on the man-like xenomorph. I have tried to no avail, was the response. Useless. This is a debacle. Get some G-Trolls down here to muscle the door open now, snarled the scientist, turning towards Guardian. Already on their way, stated Guardian. You realize once we get in there we can't ever let them leave, said Desmond. Doc, these aren't your typical meddling kids. You don't want to get on the wrong side of the Justice League, stated Guardian. Better than getting on the wrong sense of the Cadmus board of directors, believe me. Contact the genomes inside KR and Wonder Girl, stated the doctor, with the G-Gnome on Guardian's shoulder closing its eyes as its horns started glowing red. Back inside the room, Robin and just opened the containers that had held the two clones. For a moment they were still before their eyes opened, revealing the same identical blue eyes. And as the G-Gnome's horns glowed, each of them suddenly launched themselves forward, with Superba tackling Aqualad, sending both of them rolling backwards, while Wonder Girl nailed both Robin and Kid Flash with kicks to the head and chest respectively, sending them flying in separate directions. While Kid Flash was knocked out by the blow he took combined with his collision with the wall, Robin managed to recover and jumped over to aid Aqualad, managing to get the Superman clone off thanks to some gas he kept on hand before firing a taser at the clone. Though the wires made contact with his chest, the clone merely grabbed them and pulled the boy Wonder off his feet before slamming him into the ground before placing his foot to his chest. Meanwhile, Aqualad managed to recover and grabbing out of his water bearers and creating a mallet which he used to send Superboy flying, slamming into one of the metal slabs with such force he did in it. Aqualad had just put his arms down from his swing when Wonder Girl sent him flying with a punch to the chest that sent him slamming hard into a wall. Though he managed to recover and push himself off, Superboy chose that moment to slam into him with a shoulder tackle that slammed him back into a wall before he fell to the ground out cold. Wonder Girl meanwhile had walked to the double doors and flung them open, allowing for the Doctor and Guardian to enter. "Good job, children," stated Desmond as he walked into the room and surveyed the scene. Not long later found Dr. Desmond standing within the confines of his office as the room darkened as several screens came down from the ceiling and came to life. Despite this, nothing could be made out on the screens, as all the figures who occupied them only appeared white constructs. "Dr. Desmond, you require an audience with the light?" questioned one of the figures. "Yes, so very sorry to disturb you at this late hour. Just make your report," stated another of the figures. "Well, we had a small fire here at Project Cadmus. The origin of the incident is still unclear, but it seems to have attracted some unwanted attention. 3 sidekicks, Robin, Aqualad, and Kid Flash, managed to breach security. They found and released the weapons, the Superboy and the Wonder Girl. Of course, the clones are under our telepathic control and as ordered turned against his would-be liberators. The 3 are contained, and we don't believe the League knows they're here. But what should I do with them?" "Clone them," stated one of the figures. "Yes, the substitutes will serve the light, and only the light," stated another. "And the originals?" questioned Desmond. "Dispose of them, leave no trace," stated another figure. Elsewhere within the facility, Naruto sat within a chair in a monitor station. When he had first realized who it was that had entered the facility, he hadn't really been that happy, and seeing them be captured had not helped in that feeling. However, he had been quite pleased to see the Wonder Girl and was happy his little addition to the plans had worked out. Still, as he didn't wish to reveal his presence at this point, had opted to retreat back into the shadows to come up with a plan. However, considering Robin was part of this group, decided he would wait to do anything and see if they could get themselves out of this situation. "What? What do you want?" "Quit staring. You're creeping me out," called Kid Flash, bringing Naruto's attention back to the screen. KF, how about we not tick off the people who can fry us with a look?" said Robin. "We only sought to help you," said Aqualad. "Yeah. We free you, and you turn on us. How's that for grat?" started Kid Flash, only to be interrupted by Aqualad. "Kid, be quiet now. I believe our new friends were not in control of their actions," stated the Atlantean teen. Meanwhile, Robin twitched a finger, and a pick appeared from the tip of his gloved index finger. "Well, what if I wasn't?" questioned Superba. "He can talk?" came the surprised comment from KF. "Yes, he can," stated Superbo with narrowed eyes. "Not like I said it," stated KF. "The Genomorphs taught you telepathically," said Aqualad. "They taught us much. We can read, write, we know the names of things," stated Wonder Girl. "But have you seen them? Have they ever actually let you see the sky or the sun?" questioned Robin. "We get images implanted within our minds, but no, we have not seen them," stated Superba. "Do you know what you are, who you are?" questioned Aqualad. "I am the Superba, a genomorph, a clone made from the DNA of the Superman and Wonder Woman, created to replace him should he perish, to destroy him should he turn from the light. I am the Wonder Girl, a genomorph, a clone created from the DNA of Wonder Woman and the Superman, created to replace her should she perish, to destroy her should she turn from the light. To be like Superman or Wonder Woman are worthy aspirations. However, like those two, you deserve a life of your own beyond that solar suit, beyond your pod, beyond Cadmus. Stated Aqualad. We live because of Cadmus. It is our home, exclaimed Superba. Your homes are test tubes. We can show you the sun, said Robin. Pretty sure it is after midnight, but we can show you the moon, said Kid Flash, breaking his silence. We can show you, introduce you to Wonder Woman and to Superman, stated Aqualad. No, they can't, came a new voice. Turning towards the doors, the group of them were greeted to the sight of Dr. Desmond entering the room along with Guardian and another scientist, the one that Kid Flash had almost crashed into earlier. They'll be otherwise occupied. Activate the cloning process, stated Desmond, getting the female scientist to step forward. Pass, Batcave's crowded enough, called Robin, and get the weapons back in their pods, stated Desmond, turning to Guardian, who walked forward and placed a hand on both of the clone teens' shoulders. Help us, requested Aqualad, causing the two super clones to shrug of the hands. Don't start thinking now, stated Desmond, walking past them. At the same time, the G-Gnome on his shoulder leapt onto Superbuzz, while the G-Gnome on Guardian's head leapt onto Wonder Girl's shoulder, horns and eyes immediately glowing red. See, you're not real people, your weapons. You belong to me. Well, Cadmus, but same, it's the same thing. Now get back in your pods. As the doctor finished his short monologue, the two super clones turned heel and left with the doors closing shut behind them. As soon as it did, the pods the three heroes in training were inactivated with several prong-like instruments raising. They sparked at the ends before planted themselves to their chests, getting all three to shout, "Where's XX? Oh, lurking as usual, I see," stated Desmond as the man-like Genomorph emerged from the shadows. Get the genomes downloading the memories. When that's done, delete the source material, stated Desmond. Superba, Wonder Girl, you live. That gives you the right to follow your own paths as weapons or people. But ask yourself this question: what would Superman do? Whispered Aqualad, his voice reaching both clones' ears due to super hearing. Not long later, a loud impact struck the doors before they were ripped off their hinges and tossed behind the two clones. As they entered, the two of them were rushed by Guardian, XX, and two more scientists, only for Superba to backhand Guardian and XX, while Wonder Girl did the same to the other two, sending them all flying and slamming into walls. I told you to get back to your, started Desmond, only for Superba to send him flying with a backhand as well. Don't give me orders, stated Superba. You guys here to help us or fry us? Questioned Kid Flash, causing Superba to narrow his eyes. Don't seem to have heat vision, so I suppose helping is the one, stated the Superman clone. Robin chose just that moment to break free of his restraints, finally managing to pick the locks, allowing him to land on the ground. When the internal cameras were shut down and all the Genomorphs in the facility became active, Naruto decided it was time to go. Using stealth, he managed to make it all the way to the ground floor and was nearly out the door when the floor in the center of the room ruptured and Superba and a gray thing erupted from the floor. Ducking back into the shadows, he watched the group take on the creature using some impromptu planning. However, seeing what their plan was, Naruto decided the time for subtlety was over just as they brought down the building and blasted the wall beside him with a quick Rasengan, only just managing to get out before the building collapsed. Ducking into the shadows as the five made their way out of the rubble, he looked up just in time to see Superman come descending from the sky, and he wasn't alone. No, as he watched, he could see many heroes accompanying him: Zatara, Red Tornado, Martian Manhunter, and Captain Marvel, all landing behind him. His senses screaming, he turned left just as Captain Atom, Hawkman, Wonder Woman, Hawkwoman, and Green Lantern touched down. As if that wasn't enough, yet another Green Lantern came and touched down, his power ring supporting Green Arrow, Batman, Black Canary, and Aquaman. As he watched the two clones boldly step forward, both Superman and Wonder Woman widening their eyes, spotting the emblems upon their shirts. Is that what I think it is? Questioned Batman as he stepped up beside Superman. They don't like being called it, stated Kid Flash quickly. I'm Superman's clone, called the young males, surprising many. Not technically, stated Naruto, making his presence known, several of them looking in shock to see him perched atop some of the rubble. It's been a while, detective. I hope the rest of the advice I gave you was put to better use, considering this mess with the intel I handed you. stated the blonde. Who are you? Questioned Superman. Kitsune, was the prompt response. What are you doing here? Questioned Batman. Well, when I was alerted to the break-in earlier, I thought it was you, so I came to see how you worked. Imagine my surprise to find Robin, Kid Flash, and Aqualad here, though. By the way, I'll give you guys an A for effort, but the execution was C+ work at best. Still, this wasn't bad for your first time working together, so I think there's room for improvement. Stated Kitsune. What do you mean, not technically? Questioned Superba. Well, initially all you were meant to be was a clone, a carbon copy of Superman. Of course, these guys couldn't quite get it right, and the results proved unstable, so they decided to use human DNA in combination with Blue Boy there. Initially, they were going to use Lex Luthor's DNA as the stabilizing agent. I, however, took exception to that while I was here 4 months ago, and using Desmond's credentials switched the sample used to Wonder Woman's. Desmond, it seems, took it further and decided to create a pair of you, one for each hero, so you're not really clones. I think the right thing to say is that you two are the children of Wonder Woman and Superman, cultivated and grown through science. Stated Kitsune. Wait, you mean you were here the whole time and you couldn't help out? Demanded Kid Flash. Wasn't the whole point of your being here to prove you can work independently of them, just as they do you? If I had stepped in at any time, would that not have tainted that goal? Questioned Naruto in return. Why did you decide to sneak in there the first time in the first place? Questioned Wonder Woman. It was a mission I was assigned. Client needed someone who could be in and out without being noticed. Stated the blonde. Now then, seeing as everything is handled here, and this is a Justice League matter, I'll be taking my leave. Batman, you can consider this the goodwill payment I was speaking of. Before anyone could speak, he vanished, simply flickering away by another usage of Horatian. For several minutes the gathered heroes tried to track him to no avail before finally turning towards the gathered teens still standing in the center. Cadmus will be investigated all 52 levels, but let's make one thing clear, started Batman before he was interrupted. You should have called. Stated Flash quickly. End results aside, we are not happy. You hacked Justice League systems, disobeyed direct orders, and endangered lives. You will not be doing this again. Stated Batman. I am sorry, but we will. Said Aqualad, stepping forward. Aqualad, stand down. Said Aquaman. Apologies, my king, but no. We did good work here tonight, the work you trained us to do. Together on our own we forged something powerful, important. Said Aqualad. Look, if this is about your treatment in the hall, the three of you, started Flash, only to be cut off. The 5 of us, and it's not. Stated Kid Flash. Look, Batman, we're ready to use what you taught us, or why teach us at all? Questioned Robin. Why should we let them tell us what to do anyway? Questioned Superba. The way I see it, it's simple. Get on board or get out of the way. Said Wonder Girl. Alright, everyone calm down. Called Wonder Woman, getting everyone's attention. You guys want to do this, fine. But you will do it our way, under our rules, or not at all. Agreed. Stated the Amazonian princess. The 5 teens looked from her to each other before nodding their affirmatives. Seeing this, she turned to Batman, Flash, and Aquaman, all of whom nodded their consent, though of course Batman did so last. By the time Naruto arrived back in Nanda Parbat, it was already well into the afternoon. That was the one thing he didn't like about this world. It was too large, and the time difference from place to place could be enormous, such as the 12-hour difference between Washington, D.C. and Tibet. The fact that he had just used a space/time technique like Horatian to cover that distance when it wasn't designed for it left him pretty much wiped out. Of course, despite the fact all he wanted to do was drop into his bed and fall asleep, he had other things to do, such as see Roz, which he was informed about immediately upon his return. As he entered the library, he found the man sitting behind his desk, where he motioned him to take a seat, something he did happily. So did everything work out? Questioned the man as he poured a glass of water from the pitcher on the desk. Things deviated a bit, but the end result was the same. Stated Naruto gratefully, taking the offered drink. And this Junior Justice League, you're certain it's a necessity? If the League of Shadows is to follow me to my home as you wish, then I think it only right that we leave this place a bit better off than it was before. However, we can't be obvious about what we're doing. It is crucial that as few people as possible know what's going on. For that to work, this Young Justice League would be the perfect way to go about it. Stated Naruto calmly, taking a drink. The problem with standing in the light is that you can't do certain things and it limits you. By moving with the shadows, just about anything is possible as long as you are subtle enough. I promise you, when everything is said and done, the light will be extinguished. Finished the blonde. Alright, I'll trust you on this one. But remember, this is your operation, stated Roz, ending the discussion and dismissing the blonde, who nodded and left the room. It took him very little time to reach his quarters after leaving his meeting. His quarters was in all actuality an apartment, one of the better ones, complete with 2 bedrooms each containing their own bathroom, complete with bathtub and shower, a common room, and a kitchen with a balcony that from its position on the mountain looked out over the ocean. As he entered the apartment he stopped, as he could see Talia sitting within the common room, though that's not what gave him pause. This was due to the fact that he and Talia shared the apartment. What actually gave him pause was the 2 women that he could also see with her, though he quickly managed to shake it off. The 2 women in question were Talia's sister Nissa and her friend/lover Sarah. "Hello ladies, hope I'm not interrupting too much," stated the blonde as he made his way inside, grabbing a bottle of water from out of the refrigerator. "Actually, beloved, it appears your presence is exactly what we needed," stated Talia. "Okay, is this something that's going to require a lot of thinking? Because my brain is already asleep, my body is just trailing behind at this point," said Naruto, sitting down in a vacant chair across from the couch the 3 women were perched on. "We were hoping to get more information concerning our integration into your home," stated Nissa. "That's already been taken care of. Both jobs and accommodation will be provided for everyone who joins us. Spots are being opened up within our military police force, which took a major hit several years back due to the loss of the clan that was running it at the time. However, those aren't the only positions available. It all depends on skill set and available options, really. Sarah, I've already got you a job lined up as a combat instructor for our academy," explained the 16-year-old blonde. "How will we explain our presence?" questioned Sarah. "You've come at my invitation from the southern continent, as you helped train during my training trip. I invited you back to our village, and it took time to get everything for the move situated," stated Naruto. "What of your martial situation? Is polygamy a big thing there?" questioned Nissa with a frown. "No, not really. It requires special circumstances. My mother's clan, the Uzumaki, were a royal family, and most of it was wiped out. My father, however, was the 4th leader of our village. Because of this, he was given the right to create his own clan. Since he died and I was his only child, that responsibility falls to me. Because of this, I'm obligated to have a certain number of wives. If I were to refuse, I would be imprisoned until they have an appropriate number of male heirs to carry on the bloodline." "Wait, you go to jail for not having kids?" questioned Sarah with a frown. "Basically, this is due to the fact that in a shinobi village, especially one of the great 5 villages such as mine, the loss of a clan is considered a loss of considerable military strength. All of the clans have techniques that only members of that clan can do, so in order to keep our position among the best heirs, we need to have the appropriate manpower, or we risk invasion if the other villages perceive a weakness," explained Naruto with a sigh before he suddenly paused, his eyes going wide as a barrage of new information came to him. "What's wrong?" questioned Talia, looking over at him worriedly. "Did you know that the Martian has a niece?" questioned the blonde. "He does?" questioned Sarah. "Yeah, I had one of my clones hang back to see if it could get some extra tidbits of information, and it just dispelled," stated Naruto. "What exactly we're doing?" questioned Talia. "I went back to Washington D.C. because one of my spies in place in Cadmus informed me that I should come see some things. When I got there, it was just in time to see Robin, Kid Flash, and Aqualad going through the halls. Long story short, they ended up freeing a pair of super clones, one of Wonder Woman and one of Superman, though they hadn't finished the aging process, so they resembled teenagers," explained Naruto. "Wait, we have technology to clone people now?" questioned Sarah. The facility was trashed, and I may have erased all records containing the information to utilize that stuff while everyone's attention was pulled to those 3, said Naruto. "Well, that's good," stated Sarah, leaning back into the couch in relief. "Isn't that good, though, that they were freed?" "It is what you wanted from the jump," said Talia. "Yes, it is. However, things didn't go exactly as planned. I had thought the Bat would be the one to do it, so it wouldn't have taken as much time. However, since it was those three, they of course got captured and nearly cloned themselves, so I had to figure out a way to get them out without making it look like I had anything to do with it. Stated Naruto. Well, perhaps it's for the best. Batman is too suspicious and untrusting of anyone. I'd bet he'd be suspicious of his own shadow if it wasn't attached to him. Stated Nissa. On the plus side, those kids actually stuck together in front of the entirety of the Justice League. The only snag is that Harper quit on Green Arrow earlier in the day because he wasn't given a full position in the Justice League. Said Naruto. Wait, really? Questioned Sarah. Yeah, I figured with their friendship he would be golden. Those kids are going to need someone to help Rob and keep them grounded, otherwise those kids with all their ability will get arrogant. Said the shinobi. Well, I may be able to help with that. Said Sarah, surprising everyone. Like Nissa, I've actually taken on my own apprentice of sorts. However, she doesn't want to join us as she wants to be a better person than her parents were when they were younger. I could send word of her to Ali. He'll take her under his wing just because I asked, if only to keep her from going down the wrong path. Stated Sarah. This girl, who is she? Questioned Naruto, sitting forward showing his interest. Well, her name is Artemis. Aboard the Justice League headquarters known as Watchtower, a single figure moved through the halls with purpose. As she walked, several people moved out of her way, seeing the all-business look in her blue eyes. Finally, she found the person she was looking for and stood at the room's entrance, silently commanding everyone else in the room to leave in action. All of them did except her quarry, who was too busy staring down at the earth to notice. All right, Cal, you want to tell me what that was about back there? Questioned Wonder Woman as she came to stand beside Superman. What the blockbuster creature had to be squared away. Stated the Man of Steel. Not by you. Hal, John, Shara, Carter, and Nate were taking care of it. Let me reiterate, that's 2 Green Lanterns, Hawkwoman, Hawkman, and Captain Atom were taking care of it. 5 members, more than enough to handle Blockbuster. It did not need your personal attention. Said the Amazonian. What do you want from me, Diana? Questioned the man. How about the truth? You think those kids don't realize you rejected their existence, in front of the entire league no less. Stated Diana. They shouldn't exist, Diana. Their very existence represents a failure on my part. The fact that they had enough material to clone me, to create a version of me that they could weaponize, does not give me comfort. Stated Cal. That is not the fault of those kids. They are innocent in this, and we should just be thankful that those 3 boys got them out. Stated Diana. I get that, Diana. I just need time to wrap my head around this. Stated Superman. Fine, I can understand that. For the time being, I'm taking them to Themyscira. My mother would like to meet them. We should only be gone a few days. We'll talk again when I get back. Back in Konoha, Uchiha Sasuke was awoken from his sleep by the sound of banging. Looking up, he was greeted to the sight of a pair of ANBU members before they stepped back and Kakashi stepped into view. Whatever the Uchiha was going to say, however, died in his throat at the hard look in the masked man's eyes. Sasuke, I have a deal for you. Stated the man. I'm listening. Stated the Uchiha. I'm aware that you know of the recent incident. Tsunade-sama has authorized the formation of a team to go and assist Naruto. She and the council have agreed to cut your sentence to time served provided you be willing to join this team and follow orders given by the team leaders. Who will this team consist of? Questioned Sasuke. Myself, Sakura, Lee, Tenten and Niji, with Niji and I in overall command. I see. Very well, the dobe owes me a fight anyway. Very well. In 2 hours' time a team will be coming to collect you so that you can have the seals blocking your chakra removed. Said Kakashi before turning to leave. Oh, one last thing. Called Sasuke, getting him to stop. I have something set aside for you. It's in Naruto's apartment. In the back of the freezer there's a seal. At least that's where he told me he put it. Trust me on this, you'll be grateful to have it. Said the Uchiha before going back to sleep. As the sun rose over the Hidden Leaf Village, the Godame Hokage, Senju Tsunade, looked on from atop the Hokage monument with a small serene smile on her face. She currently stood in Naruto's spot atop the head of her grandfather, the Shodai Hokage, Senju Hashirama. Of course, the difference was Naruto frequented the spot during sunset, as he wasn't a morning person by any means. She, however, had no choice but to wake early on a regular basis. Such was one sacrifice for the position she currently held. Still, she usually used this time to prepare herself for the trials that would await her during the day. At the same time, she ran an eye over the village, and was pleased by what she saw. By this point, the village had been half rebuilt after it had basically been destroyed by Pain, or rather Nagato, all those months ago. In fact, it was hard to believe that it had only been 8 months since Naruto returned with Jiraiya from his training trip. At the same time, it sometimes felt like it had been even longer with all that had happened in just that small stretch of time. The war itself had obviously not been pretty, and many lives had been lost during its short course. Konoha had lost several heavy hitters in Hyuga Hayashi, Naro Shikaku, Yamanaka Inoichi, and Meido Gai during the course of the war, with Gai being the greatest loss from a muscle standpoint, and Shikaka being the greatest from a mental one. Of course, there had been many more to lose their lives in the struggle, but those were the big ones for her village that had the greatest effect. Kumogakure itself had been destroyed due to a tailed beast bomb launched by the Jubi itself, very similar to the one that had taken out the command center that Shikaku and Inoichi had been operating from. The Yandame Reikage, known simply as A, had fallen during the war, having taken the full brunt of the black flames of Amaterasu from Uchiha Madara himself, and the Sandame Tsuchikage had also met his end at the hands of the legendary Uchiha. The man who had acted as the 1st Division commander during the war, Darui, had stepped up and taken up the mantle of Godame Reikage, while the 2nd Division commander, Kitsuchi, had taken his father's place as Yandame Tsuchikage. At the moment, all of the villages were busy trying to recover from the losses they had suffered during the fighting, and all had agreed on terms for a peaceful alliance between them. There had of course been a few times that small fires had flared up as more than a few parties had tried to end the alliance, but those fires had quickly found themselves being put out. Initially, after the alliance's initial disbandment, none of the other powers had wanted to stick with it, and all of them had felt there was no more need to it. The Jubi itself had vanished after all the fighting, and no one had a clue where it had vanished to, though there were multiple theories. However, everyone knew it was still around, as about 2 days after it had vanished, a large surge of power had been felt. When parties had arrived at the source to investigate, they'd found 5 previously dead people standing at the source, those people being Rashi, Han, Fu, Yujuto, and Yudakata. When they had appeared, their corresponding Bija had returned to their previous host, and Shikaka likewise had done the same, though Naruto still held a bond with each of the Bija. At the moment, the only Bija without a Jinchuriki was the Sanbai, or rather Isabu, as she had learned was its name. Yagura had declined his reincarnation, having felt he had done enough damage, and instead had given the gift to someone else according to the others, and Isabu, hearing this, had left to find if this person would be a worthy partner. They had also arrived with another message. The Jubi, or rather Shinju, whichever you preferred, was giving them a chance. They had returned to make sure they didn't it up. Of course, things regarding Jinchuriki had changed. No longer was being one viewed as a curse. Thanks to Naruto and Kurabi, it was now looked at as a high honor. The rules regarding Jinchuriki had all been scrapped and rewritten as one of the first things the new Council of Kages had done. A Jinchuriki would no longer be a weapon or even a deterrent for other villages, and they were to be given a certain level of treatment. They would no longer be neglected and abused, nor could they be spoiled and placed on a pedestal. However, they were to be given the same treatment as everyone else, which suited the current ones just fine. It had also been made clear that only a Jinchuriki could choose his or her successor. Whether they be related to a Kage in some way or not was now irrelevant. Any group seeking to forcibly obtain a Jinchuriki or Bijou was to be immediately stomped out by a task force consisting of representatives from all forces within the alliance, which at that point also included Taki. Thanks to Fu, those had been the easy terms, and even the various daimyo had agreed. One brush with the Shinju had been enough for everyone. However, while everyone else was content to get back to the status quo, Naruto had urged her to get the alliance back up. Initially reluctant, she had relented to his, arguing none of the great villages really had much manpower at that point, and it would not be impossible for the smaller nations to band together and knock one or more of them out. It had been a tough battle, but one she'd been able to win with the various daimyo and the kage of the other villages in order to get the alliance reformed. Seemingly, as soon as word spread the Great Five had banded together, they had started getting missives from other countries trying to join up. At the moment, the countries of Oni no Kuni, Haru no Kuni, and Na no Kuni were all either in negotiations or newly approved members of the alliance, which she personally did not think was a coincidence since all three leaders had a connection with Konoha's resident troublemaker and Jinchuriki, and two of those leaders had or would be giving birth to Naruto's children. The daimyo of Tori no Kuni had also sent a message about joining the growing alliance, so she knew negotiations would begin with her soon as well. In the beginning, a lot of people had voiced displeasure of allowing countries that had done nothing during the war to have a part of the alliance. However, it had once again been Naruto who had stepped forward and gave a reason why they should allow it. After all, the more territories that were included, the closer they'd come to a lasting peace. And at the end of the day, that's all everyone wanted. It had in fact been that reason that she had allowed Naruto to take the lead in the negotiations, and things had gone wonderfully. Despite the fact that he had very little training in the matter, he had not allowed too much or too little for any party. In fact, people were actually quite pleased with him because he treated everyone the same. For instance, Kazuhana Koiki, the daimyo of Haru no Kuni, had given them the plans for the trains, and in exchange Naruto had allowed her country's entry. At first no one had been happy on their side, as they had no clue for why he would want such a thing, but once the plans were in hand, he had used them to show that they were a method for faster travel between countries. And this he'd wanted not for the shinobi but for the civilians, so that they could all travel and see more of the world and understand what it was the alliance fought for. Needless to say, after that people were a lot more trusting, and the blonde had yet to disappoint, which was why it had been so easy to get Naruto the official appointment as her successor. It was also for that reason she was worried. Naruto was not only the hero of the war, but he'd been the one to ensure that everything they were doing now would be able to be maintained. It was for this reason that she was worried about the reactions of the other villages if they were to learn that something had happened to him. At the end of the day, Naruto was what kept the alliance going, and she didn't want to risk any type of infighting without him there to help maintain order. Sure, it wasn't right she relied on him so much, but since everyone respected him for his actions during the war, his presence during the meetings helped things go smoother. Another thing that was bothering her was the fact that she'd actually allowed the Uchiha brat out of his cell. The fact of the matter is, the only reason the alliance had been able to get intact once more was due to the fact that Naruto had stated that the teen would be there for quite some time. Both Mifune and Darui had been quite adamant in killing the Uchiha, who had taken a fair number of lives from their own men. More than that, he'd actually revived Orochimaru, and despite the fact that said Snake Sannin had in turn summoned the four deceased Hokage via Edo Tensei, the fact that the snake was once again among the living galled at everyone. As of this moment, there was only one living S-class nuke Nin, and he was it, and Orochimaru was good at hiding and biding his time. Suna wanted him dead, Konoha wanted him dead, and all the others just wanted to ensure he wouldn't be a problem. Unfortunately, it had also been the council's decision to release him into Kakashi's custody. Because of this, and the feeling that he would cause trouble if left to his own devices, she had immediately written Naruto about the fact that Uchiha would be part of the team. She would have sent Sai instead, but the ink user was currently on a mission with Anko and Tenzo, and as such was unavailable. Hinata had volunteered for the mission herself, but as she was now clan head, and thus could not just go out as she pleased, as such she had requested Niji be sent in her place. Still, while she felt she had done everything that she could on her end, she couldn't help but wonder what could happen. Elsewhere, the current focus of her musing, Naruto, unaware of her thoughts, was currently deep in meditation as he focused on collecting himself. Ever since his sage training, he'd taken to meditating each morning before anything else. Even if he wasn't drawing nature chakra, it was a good way to prepare himself for the day ahead. Though it hadn't been long since the formation of what he called the Young Justice League, things had still managed to progress nicely. Sarah's protégé Artemis had indeed been taken under the wing of Oliver Queen, otherwise known as the Green Arrow, after she'd stumbled across a fight between Superba, Robin, and Kid Flash against a machine called Amazo that would steal the abilities of others. She had helped them out covertly and managed to save Kid Flash's life. He himself had approached Artemis beforehand and told her of what they wanted. At first she'd been against it, but learning that all they wanted was for her to be on the team and that she could do whatever she wanted and not have to play spy, she'd been sold. She, unlike Batman, was even considered a full member of the League of Shadows, though what she did with those skills was up to her. Naruto himself had been doing likewise, traveling, wanting to get out and see more of this new world he had stumbled into. While his trip had only just barely begun, he would admit that he found the sights and some of the people he met quite interesting. He'd had a really interesting conversation with this blonde girl he'd met in Paris while he'd been stopping for lunch. Seeing as all the other tables had been full, she had allowed him to join her, and the two ended up speaking about military service after she stated she was thinking of signing up. Having had his own experiences on the subject, he had given her his own opinion on the matter, and had left her with much to think about. While he didn't know it then, as he never got her name, his words had a profound effect on the young woman who turned out to be Lucy Lane, and it would be that conversation with him that would change her perception about things quite drastically. He'd also gone and spent a few days in Japan, mostly out of curiosity. Still, the visit had been quite interesting, and while there he'd met with a woman by the name of Tatsu. He'd met her in a club, and things had been pretty lively when these Yakuza brutes had stormed the place. Never one to run from a fight, he'd punched the first one who tried to grab him in the throat and started the massacre that had followed. He had been surprised to see Tatsu had been in there holding her own quite well during the melee, and in the end both of them had left a pile of bodies in their wakes each. He'd followed out of simple curiosity, as the attack had been meant for her, and he'd wanted to see how she would respond. What he'd seen of her had impressed him. She was good in both taijutsu and kenjutsu, however eventually she'd been overrun, and he'd decided to emerge from the shadows, after the two of them had dealt with the Yakuza and their boss, who turned out to be her former brother-in-law. She had offered him a gift, which had been a katana to replace his own sword that had been broken in the skirmish. In truth, it had shattered due to an influx of wind chakra he'd channeled through it that it had been unable to handle. Whatever the case, she'd gifted him with the one her former brother-in-law had tried wielding against her during the battle. The sword itself was 42 inches overall, with 28 inches made up solely by the blade, which had a pale green inscription running along its length. Its name was Jinranmaru, Raging Storm, and according to Tatsu was most likely some type of special or legendary, as that was the type that her former brother-in-law was interested in. He had thanked her profusely for the gift, and afterwards the two had gone out for a drink.